Hello lovely people. Oh, shift. How are you all today? I hope you're well. I am, if a little hot. I've got my fan to hand. We're having a bit of a heat wave, a little mini heat wave. I'm boiling. I've actually just got back from the garden. I've been harvesting today in the midday sun. It was way hotter than I was expecting. A bit overdressed. So excuse my sweaty head. I've got a sweaty head. Yeah, back to reality. Back to the garden and all the jobs. Oy vey. There is so much needing to be done. I'll come to that a bit later. But yeah, I've made a start today. Lavender harvesting. I've done about, I would say about a quarter of it today, which produced 10 of my large paper carrier bags that I put them in for drying. It produced about 10 of those. So yeah, I reckon, might not even be a quarter of the way through. I reckon it'll be about 40 bags in total. So that's 10 done today, 4 of which have been brought home for drying. That's all I can manage in one go. So yay, the lavender harvest is underway, which means, of course, as we go into the very late autumn and early winter, my evenings will be taken up by taking flower buds off stalks. Yeah, reality check. It's back to the grind of the work of the garden. Now, whilst I was there, I'm going to come back to the garden towards the end. I want to talk about a couple of things first. Whilst I was there was no one around. So quiet. It was gorgeous. The only sound was me going, ooh, ooh, every time I bent over and went as I was blowing the sweat out of my eyes. But it was really quiet, and there were moments of just sort of, you know, I'd snip, 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 slightly pruning and shaping the bushes as I go, and then I'd sit up and stop and just sit in the quiet. Oh, it's lovely. And while I was doing that, I was kind of mulling over quite a lot of the comments that had come up on my last video when I was saying Swanage or London, I can't decide. Yeah, there were lots of comments where, firstly, there were some comments and I thought, oh, I thought I dealt with this before. Maybe I haven't been clear. That's my bad. Sometimes I assume things, and you know, that teaches me don't assume anything. You know, be clear, explain things. So there were some things which were just a confusion, but also there were some things where folk were expressing concern over certain matters. So I thought, let's just address it very quickly today, and then we can kind of park all that for now whilst I get back to reality, actually, the garden, the flat, all that kind of stuff. Get on with all this stuff over the late autumn, winter, going into next spring. And obviously all the time in my mind I'm going to be thinking about the move and where I want to be, etc, etc. But yeah, let's just address some of these concerns now, and hopefully I can allay anyone's concerns, because people do seem to be concerned, and that's really sweet. Thank you. Thank you. You know, it shows that folk care, and that's really precious. So thank you. Okay. Diving at the deep end. Hang on a sec. So, I've made a few notes. Right. First things first. Some of this will be Swanage specific. Some of it's going to be whether I stay in London or move to Swanage or move anywhere, for that matter. Although my goal, I think my search is going to be London and Swanage. It may be that I end up having to look elsewhere as well. You know, if I can't find anything, I'm going to have to spread the search. But I've got other ideas. That's okay. Please don't give me ideas. So yes, but focusing on Swanage for a second, about people's concerns about if I lived there, how realistic is that? So, firstly, in terms of the medical and healthcare, Of course, that's something I checked out. Sorry, I forgot to mention it. And it's something I know, obviously, from my grandparents' time. So just to reiterate that, my grandparents, first of all, they lived up in the little village that I'm not going to move to because everything's shut. And then in the 80s, so they would be in their, I think they were just into their 70s when they moved from the village down into Swanage, because Swanage is a town and has everything there for them. I think they were into their 70s at that stage. But my grandparents lived there until, well, my granddad was, I think my granddad was, sorry granddad, I think he was 91 when he died. My grandma died a few months short of her 100th, just like her sister, Auntie Teapot. Auntie Teapot died a couple of days short of her 101st birthday. Long lived my gang. But my grandma lived in Swanage itself until she was about 92, I think. The reason I'm going is because right towards the last few years in my nan's life, she then went to live with my aunt and uncle, so my mum's sister. We're a very small family. There's just my mum and her sister. So her sister, my aunt, had 2 kids, my cousins. Well, that's it. We're a tiny family. So obviously both my grandparents lived down there until they were into their 90s, and of course they had healthcare provision. So I know about it already. So there's a GP practice right in the centre of Swanage. It's in the flat part of Swanage. Let's just talk about the hills first of all. A lot of people said it's very hilly there because that first video in Swanage Old Town, yes, it is very hilly, but I wouldn't live on one of the hills. That's why I was saying there's just a few streets that I would focus my search on, which are in the flat. It's kind of like in the bottom section of the town on the flat. And it's that flat area where all the shops are, all the amenities are, the bus station is on the flat bit, the train station, and the GP surgery, the post office. Everything is in that little flat area. And my search would be for a property within 5 minutes walk of all of that. So yes, GP surgery, hospital in terms of getting my knees done. The local hospital is Poole, and that's accessible by bus easily enough, or it's not too far for, if one had to, for a taxi. So both my grandparents used Poole Hospital, absolutely fine. Swanage itself has a little cottage hospital that I've used because I tried to take the end of this finger off one day with my Swiss Army knife a few years ago. I was like, oh my God, quick, run to the hospital. They stitched me back together and sent me on my way. And actually, when my grandma had one of her falls, she was at the cottage hospital rather than at Poole. So that meant I was staying in the house, but I could go every day to the little cottage hospital in Swanage. So healthcare provision, it's there. It's not quite as close as the hospital that I use here in London, but it's close enough. So yeah, healthcare, doctor's surgery covered. Something else that came up, quite a few people said, I think you need to go back in the winter because it's all very nice in the summer. I don't need to go back in the winter. I've spent many, many winters there. Putting it in a nutshell, I have been going and staying in Swanage in my noughts and tens, my teens, my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, my 50s. I have been going there all through my life. I have been there in every season, high season, low season, Christmas, Easter, and everything in between. I know what the town is like in the middle of winter. I know what it's like, for instance, staying in my grandma's house at that far, far, far end, and the cottage hospital is at the other 3 miles away. I know what it's like to walk from my grandma's house in lashing rain all the way through the town and back up to the cottage hospital. I know what it's like to go shopping in the lashing rain down there, dragging a granny trolley back up to where my grandparents used to live. So I know what it's like in all the seasons. And actually, I love seaside towns out of season. I love it when they empty and they become really wild. That would suit me. You know, I love summer. I'm definitely a summer girl. I'm going to adore it in the summer. But I love that kind of wildness, the bleakness, the emptiness in winter. So please don't worry. I know what it's like in all seasons. And that brings me to another comment which kept coming up, which was, again, this is only with reference to if I move to Swanage rather than stay in London. Quite a few people said they were concerned that I was basing this move, which is a huge decision, you know, I appreciate that, I know that, but that I was basing this on a couple of holidays I had as a kid. So I hope from all that stuff I've just said about being there all the time lets you know that I'm not basing this on a couple of holidays I had when I was a kid. I'm not basing this on memories of me and my sister as kids playing there. I have a relationship with that town as an adult. I'm not trying to recreate the past by being there. Absolutely not. And again, the very fact that this is somewhere I've gone all my life, I have a how to put it, I have a relationship with it that's current, that's the me of now, the grown-up me. So I'm not trying to recreate the past. This isn't rose-tinted spectacles. I'm not trying to recreate my childhood. I wouldn't want to. I didn't have a particularly happy childhood, if I'm honest. I wouldn't want to go back there. Yeah, this isn't about going back in time. This is very much about me and my future and where I can see myself being. So that's all fine. Now, in terms of the practicalities, and then I'm going to come on to London as well. So someone suggested that because I don't have any dependents, that I sell this place and then instead of scrimping all my life, I can live on the money that this makes. Okay, so that wouldn't be possible because, okay, let's say it was in Swanage. I won't do London because London prices are ridiculous. I wouldn't dream of doing that in London. But let's say I move to Swanage and instead of buying, I sell this place and I rent somewhere and I live on this money. The rent alone, if I just use the proceeds from this flat for rent, that money would run out by the time I would be about 72 or 73. So at the age of 72 or 73, I'd have no income but my bit of pension, which wouldn't cover it. I'd have no money for rent and no home. So no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to... I would be scrimping more than ever because I'd have rent to pay. And that's one of the great things about owning my property and having paid off my mortgage. Oh, it was about 9 years ago now. It means I don't have to worry about big payments like mortgage or rent. All I have to worry about is paying my bills, which means I can manage. If I suddenly have to start finding rent again, yeah, the sale of it would run out pretty quickly. But also, the problem with renting is it's so insecure. You know, in London, I mean, this has happened to me 3 times in London. So before I got on the property market in 2000 or through the 90s, 3 of the places that I was renting, I got notice to not an eviction notice, I hadn't done anything wrong, but I got notice to leave because the landlord wanted to sell the property. And it's like, oh, now I've got to find somewhere else to live at short notice. I've got 30 days notice to it. I cannot face that insecurity going into my older age. Imagine if I'm 85 living in a rental and the landlord decides to sell it. Me as an 85-year-old having to find a new home and do the move again. And moving is expensive. I can't move this all on my own. I'd have to hire people. So no, it's too insecure. But also in all our coastal towns, finding affordable places to rent is so hard because why would a landlord rent to me at, say, £1,000 a month when he can rent to tourists for £1,000 a week? at high season, and even in low season, 500 quid a week, and therefore make anywhere between 2 and 3 and 4 grand a month from holiday letting rather than from a long-term renter. So no, the whole rental market is far too insecure. Been there, done that when I first came to London. I never ever want to have home insecurity like that again. It was horrible, and I worked so hard to get onto the property ladder. I worked so hard to have this little home and to pay it off and to own it. That's my one security till the end of my days. And also at the end of my days, I may need to, sell wherever I'm living to pay for care in a care home. And also, as far as not having any dependents, well, I've got my nephew. So at the moment in my will, it's going to him and a couple of friends. And, he may have kids one day. I might have great nieces and nephews. I might be Auntie Teapot to his little Vivies, as it were. That's weird. So no, that's not an option. Other folk have talked about the option of maybe I rent this place for a year, rent down there for a year to see if I really like it. You know what? That probably wouldn't be a bad idea if that area was completely unknown to me. In fact, I think that would be probably a good idea, maybe 6 months. But no, for me, when I come to do the move, I just want to do it all in one fell swoop, have it done and dusted, move in, settle, start my new life. Carry on with my old life in a new place, but do some new things, more of new things in a second. So yeah, I wouldn't want to do that option. There was something else about that I wanted to mention about the whole rental thing. It's completely gone out of my head. I always think if something's important enough, it'll pop back up. No, gone. Never mind. Now the garden scenario. So I remember, when did I first moving publicly to all of you? Because it's been in my head for longer than I've mooted it. Oh, there is something else I wanted to say about the knees and the move. A lot of people have said, get your knees done and then move because you'll be more mobile for the move. I won't be able to have knee surgery while I'm here. They just will not do it to me. They will not replace a knee on someone who is then going to come home to a home where they live alone at the top of 60 stairs. I would be completely cut off. So they just won't do it. They won't touch me with a barge pole. And I quite understand that, knee surgery can be quite a long rehab. I know there'll be some people out there who will say, oh, the next morning I was running up and down 5 flights of stairs. Well, good for you. But for the majority of people, it's quite a long rehab. And it just wouldn't be considered safe for me to be on my own at the top of 60 stairs. So hence the need to get this move done and then get my, either here, get back to my GP, or with a new GP say, right, let's start the process of getting me on a waiting list. So I'm not even on a waiting list at the moment. The garden. So back to what I was saying a second ago. I can't, but I've got quite a lot of energy considering I've been in the garden and I got hot. Anyway, yeah, so when I first mooted it publicly, I think it was February last year, year and a half ago, lost my train of thought. Oh yes, the garden. People were saying at the time, because I was adamant at that point that I want to stay in London, and there's a big part of me does. But a lot of people were saying, yeah, but if you move to the countryside, Vivi, you can buy a bungalow and you get a lovely big garden. Or, you go to move to the countryside and buy a lovely big, big house, big garden. Well, not in Dorset, you can't, it's too expensive. But also the big houses and the big gardens, they're out in the sticks, and I don't drive. I need to live in a town. But yeah, there's a lot of talk about you could end up with a really big garden, yay. I don't want a big garden. It's as simple as that. I do not want a big garden. Because even if I've had my knees done, it's still a lot to manage. I will be very happy with a little garden. I can picture it, you know, so long as it's got enough space for a little table and a couple of chairs or a little bench. Do you remember in that video when I showed you around Swanage Old Town? It was it was in part 2. And I went to show you the jail and then the old town hall house with the little garden of pots outside it with a little table and chairs. That would be perfectly sufficient for me, and I would love that. A couple of pots for some tomatoes and a couple of cocoa de pampole beans, but essentially a garden that's for just sitting outside, writing, having a cup of tea, wouldn't have a cup of tea, glass of wine, somewhere to eat outside, maybe if I've got friends staying, somewhere we can sit and eat outside. I think I'd probably get more into flower gardening, which would be fun. That would be a new venture for me, because I'm not really a flower gardener, apart from the calendula and lavender. Apart from flowers which serve a purpose as herbs, I've never really been a flower gardener, so that would be, you know, quite a fun new venture. And again, I'm talking about London as well as if I move somewhere else. I do not want a big garden. I want something small and manageable. Because the fact is, you know, over the last few years, it just takes me longer and longer and longer to do anything and everything in the garden. I mean, I love it. You all know I love it. You can tell when I'm in the garden film, you know I love it. But it's become the commitment has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger with each passing year in terms of time, the time commitment. So even though the garden is much pared down and simplified this year, even so the time commitment is growing exponentially. Quite simply, what I used to be able to do in a day a few years ago now takes me 3, 4, 5 days. So really to maintain the garden to my own standard and production, it's pretty much become a 7 days a week job. And the bottom line is this: I don't want to do the garden 7 days a week. If it was a back garden, I wouldn't mind stepping outside for half an hour 7 days a week to do a little bit of tinkering, a bit of deadheading. But it's the whole thing of going to an allotment. That's 20-minute walk there, 25-minute walk home. So it's best part of an hour just getting there and back. I just don't want to be gardening 7 days a week. As much as I love it, there's so much else I want to do with my life, with my time, with my days. And I'm really excited about doing as well. I've got 1,000,001 projects that have been stuffed in my brain and kept in there over the years that I want to release them now. And the only way I can do that is if I've got more time. And the only way I can give myself more time is to spend less time gardening. Or, in other words, less time growing my own food. Because that's what it's all been about, hasn't it? It's growing my own food. And the reward for all that time, of course, has been these wonderful harvests I've had over the years. So grateful for every morsel. But yeah, it's just got to a point where the effort and the reward are starting to be out of balance. You know what, frankly, gardening every day gets boring. You know, if you do the same thing every day, it's boring. Or at least it is for me. So, again, talking about, say, Swanage, of course I checked out the allotment situation. I checked it out years ago. So yeah, I know about the allotments in Swanage. They do have them. But again, partly because I don't want to garden on that scale anymore. Now the thing is, maybe after knee surgery, I've got to have both knees done. They won't do them at the same time. They'll do one, give it a year of recovery, then do another year of recovery. So let's say 10 years time, I've had both of them done. I'm feeling way more mobile and active, and I think, oh, I wouldn't mind getting back into the allotment scene. Where the allotments are in Swanage, they're kind of up a bit, a bit high. And again, it's going to be quite a walk like I've got here. But who knows, maybe 10 years down the line, I'd be up for it again. That's fine. That's for the future. Likewise in London. You know, I am going to give up the... If I stay here in my current neighbourhood, I am going to give this plot up. I'm not exactly sure when. I know I've been saying it. It will happen. Don't know exactly when, but I'll give it up and I'll be happy. Honestly, I will be happy to let it go back to the society, and a new family can start their growing adventure. I'm going to go all emotion. You know what? New people can start their growing adventure. And like I said, if I'm in this area still in 10 years' time, or do it before then, like maybe on the day of my first knee surgery, put myself on the waiting list to come back to it. But right now, I think my allotment days they're numbered. They are numbered. In my grandparents' old village, there are allotments as well. When I was last down with my sister, I think it was 2019 or 2018, when we went for our walk, we went and had a bit of a nosy at the allotments. But not going to live in that village no matter what. No matter where I end up, it won't be that village because unfortunately it's dead. So let me see. I scribbled some notes. Excuse the side of my sweaty head for the minute. Yes. So this whole thing with the giving up of the allotments, for now, maybe forever, maybe just for now. You know, if I got a garden. Let's say I end up with a garden that's the equivalent of, say, 1/3 of my current allotment. That would be a great little size for me, because there would be room there to have a really lovely patio area. I'm picturing a kind of courtyardy garden, but a lovely area to have, you know, an awning maybe, a pretty table and chairs and pots of herbs by the door, and then maybe a few larger, deeper pots for some veggies and flowers and what have you. That would be perfect, but honestly, no bigger. I keep losing my train of thought. Yes, that's it. Now, when, not if, when, sorry, I'm so boiling, I'm dying of thirst right now. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I'm not dying of thirst. There are people literally dying of thirst in the world. I just mean I'm gagging for a drink. Now, the thing with giving up the garden, and this has come up separately as well, is I know a lot of people have said, but if you give up the garden, what are you going to do for food? You're going to starve. I'll go to the shops and buy food like everybody else does. No, I know what people mean. Suddenly I'd have to buy food again, which means I'm suddenly going to have to find 20 quid a week more, probably. I think I could shop for 20 quid a week. But yeah, suddenly I'm going to have to find 20 quid a week to buy food. So, I need to make extra income. But of course, if I'm not doing the garden all day, every day, I mean, it's never that much, but if I'm not doing all that gardening, I'll use the time differently, creatively, to generate income, making things. I want to tell you about something of that in a second. So that freed up time from not being in the garden, I would use to, to generate an income. Because of course, the other thing with the garden, not only it sort of generates two incomes in a way. The income of the harvest, and it generates a little bit of income in terms of me making videos from the garden. So in a way, it's like I would be losing two income streams. But yeah, like I said, I will, all these ideas that I've been having over the years, it would free me up to do all those other things. And a lot of it would be sewing, crafting, what have you. There's a specific I want to show you, just leaning down for a prop. I just thought of something else very quickly as well, back onto the kind of hilliness or wherever, or just general mobility stuff. I know a lot of folk have mentioned over time, what about a mobility scooter, including where I am right now for here and now. What about a stair lift? Can't fit a stair lift in here. Firstly, I don't own the hallway. I only own a third of it, as in it's co-owned. It's too steep, it's too windy, we wouldn't fit a stair lift in. And I don't think the other two people would agree to it because it'd be right across their front doors. I haven't had any sort of mobility scooter, bicycle, anything like that because I've got nowhere to store one. There is no space in our hallway downstairs. When I move, yeah, I'm perfectly open to it. I'm open to the idea of an electric bicycle, a moped, anything like that. But again, it all depends on space for storing. So for example, I have been looking at properties around here, or kind of, looking in the estate agent's windows, ground floor properties where you've got a front garden. Quite often, the whole front garden is taken up with bin sheds for everybody. If there's 3 flats, a ground floor, first floor, second floor flat in one property, the whole front yard is taken up with the bin sheds for everybody's bins. Green bin, brown bin, blue bin, black bin, God knows how many coloured bins. So again, it'd be one of those things, there's no way of knowing what I'd be able to do in terms of that mobility kit until I actually find somewhere. And then if there's enough space in the front garden, and if I'm allowed, the front garden might be owned by flat 1. If I am allowed, then yes, I could build a shed for housing the scooter. It's one of the things, yeah, I'm perfectly open to the idea. It's one thing I've thought of frequently, but I can't do it here, and I've no idea if I can do it in my next place. All I know is that most front gardens around here are full of blimmin' bins. Back to that, a bit hopping all over the place today. It's just, lots of ideas are firing at the moment, and that's great. It's great that all this stuff is whizzing around in my head, and I'm, jotting things down when I think of them and thinking, oh yeah, that's something I need to consider, or I've considered it, whatever. This idea of having more time because I don't have the garden, so without having an allotment size garden, I lose that side of income, so I need to increase income, but of course without having the garden my time increases. So it's all about, making stuff to sell. And something I've been dying to get back into for ages. I'm going to be quick. I had so many other bits and pieces to talk about today. Books, they can wait for another video. Something I've been wanting to get back into for ages is a craft that my grandma was incredibly skilled in. And she taught me when I was little, but I've kind of forgotten. Oops, my bad. I'm walking in my grandma's footsteps really, because she basically eked a living off the land in Dorset. So self-sufficient with food to a great degree, and then crafted and sold stuff to support their income. And one of the things that she was brilliant at, I was overhearing something. I think it was, there's a series in the UK, I think it's just called On the Farm, and it's like springtime on the farm, harvest on the farm, winter on the farm. And it's a series, they'll do like a whole week of, they come live from the farm. It's somewhere in Yorkshire. And recently it was Harvest on the Farm. So there's an hour show each night, and they talk about what's harvesting, and it's a very seasonal show. And they often talk about different crafts. And this one craft came up that I love, that I'm going to talk about now. And they talked about how it's on the critically endangered list. So is it the Craft Guild of the United Kingdom? I think they have a list of all these crafts and who's doing them, and who's still practicing them, and a lot of our crafts are dying out, although there seems to be a resurgence in some of them recently. This is a subject I've touched on before, actually. But yeah, there are some, specifically some of the very regional crafts, some of the crafts which are only done in a really tiny area of the UK, where they're dying out. There's only one person left doing it, and if no one wants to learn to do it, then that craft is going to die out. And they mention that this craft is on the critically endangered list, which I found shocking. It is the craft, they called it wheat weaving. That's not what I grew up knowing it as. I grew up knowing it as corn dollies, corn doll making. And it's not what my North American friends think of. It's not your corn, you know, the big long husks, the sweet corn, as we think, or maize corn. It's not the papery outsides that you make dolls from. This is corn, wheat, beautiful golden wheat, to make things such as this. It's sweet. This is a teeny, teeny, tiny one. Gorgeous. And so, like with all our British crafts, there are different shapes for different regions in the country. And I used to love doing this when I was little with my grandma. Really loved it. There were times when you have to get permission from the farmer first, but after the harvest is in, usually around the end of August, wheat, I'm talking about wheat. So this one doesn't have any ears of corn left on it, but a lot of the designs, they actually still have the ears of corn included. But yeah, so around harvest time, you know, generally around the end of August, depends how warm and dry the summer has been. But after harvest, so I remember it so vividly, going out with my grandma into the fields afterwards to glean the fields. So we'd be walking the field, bent head down with our baskets, both for ears of corn, but particularly for anywhere the entire length of the stem and the corn was still attached. She did used to have to buy quite a lot of corn in, because there was never enough from gleaning to give her enough for her to do her making. But yeah, she used to make and sell corn dollies. So I would love to give that a go as well. Even if I'm staying in London, it doesn't matter. I don't have to live in Dorset to make a corn doll. So I was looking online at the how-to books. They're all out of print, but as soon as I saw the cover designs, they're all from the sort of 60s and 70s. I remember them so vividly. There is one in print, and I know it's being bought for me for Christmas by a family member. So, and what I will do, because it's been so long, I'll be really clumsy. For now, I'm going to start practicing with art straws, which are they're the long white paper straws. You see them in schools and stuff like that for sort of engineering projects and what have you. That way I can practice with the art straws, which are inexpensive, and when it's rubbish and I've made a mistake, I can just chuck it in the recycling. So yeah, and hopefully I can get good enough within a couple of years or so. I don't think it will take me that long. There are some designs which are quite simple, which I really should be able to master within a few months, so that hopefully maybe even by next summer I can start to taper off gardening and increase my making and selling. So yeah, I look forward to that. And of course, if nothing else, I've always got sewing to fall back on. And again, myriad ideas and projects for sewing. I don't need any creative ideas thrown at me. I've got a whole, like I said, millions of them in my brain. So look, I feel very optimistic about the future, dead excited, can't wait to start my next chapter, wherever it will be. But wherever it will be without an allotment initially. God, it'll free up so much time. So in the next few videos, I've got some books to talk about and other stuff. There will be stuff from the garden. It's harvest time. God, there's so much. My God, the tomatoes, they're dripping. Other dry stuff, I want to talk about dry harvests. The squash harvest, of course. Yay, the annual squash harvest. And I know that tons of you, for you, it's your favourite harvest too. I'm going to also do a video about beans. I'm going to talk specifically about dry beans, freezing them demi-sec. How do you store the dried ones? Why do I put the dried ones in the freezer and then take them out? How do you then cook them? The ones that are demi-sec in the freezer, how do you cook them? I get asked not zillions, don't exaggerate, Vivi. I get asked about 12 questions a month. No, I do get asked a lot about why are you doing it like that? How do you do this? What do you do afterwards? All to do with the beans and how I store them, and depending on how I've stored them, how do I then cook them? So I thought we'll do a little monograph video all about the beans. So that'll be coming up soon too. Honestly, I think for the rest of October, I'm hardly going to have time for my feet to hit the ground. It's going to be harvest, 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 preserve, preserve, preserve. As it is every year, that lovely, lovely cycle of the year. All the good stuff's coming in. All right, lovelies. I will, though, for today, wrap that up. I sincerely hope that answers everyone's questions. And a lot of that applies. It doesn't matter where I live, where I look at, the same considerations will be applied. Health provision, public transport, shops, etc., etc. And I know, because I'm a chatty girl, I know I can make a new life for myself anywhere, and I make the most of it because that's what I always do. All right, gorgeosities, I will see you soon. Yeah, we'll be in the garden. Please don't be too shocked when you see the garden. It's a state. Anyway, importantly though, there's tons of food in there. Let's go and grab some next time. Until then, lots of love to you all. Cheerio.